All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another executive morning briefing by CBS Executive. And I'm very happy to have Mads Øvlisen today with me here for this seminar. Let me first run through some housekeeping. Let's kind of discuss some context before I kind of get to the discussion with Mads and before we can engage with the topic. So, okay. So we have three questions for today. And this is what I will debate with Mads in just a minute. So what really makes for leadership that drives companies a sustainability transition? Of course, that's an interesting question, right? I mean, that's what is really what is really behind leadership. How do leaders deal with trade-offs? And then also how to build coalitions with non-business partners. So this is the partnership agenda. And as indicated, I'm very happy to have Mads here. Mads is, well, the former CEO of Novo Nordisk.
Very much former.
Very much former from 81 till 2000. You significantly expanded the company's position as a leader in diabetes treatment. And I think there were also a couple of really large happenings in your tenure, right? There was the merger and
demerger.
The merger. So very warm welcome to you, Mads, this morning here. My name is Andreas Rasche, and I'm the host for this webinar series. I'm a professor here at Copenhagen Business School and also doing research on sustainability and particularly the EU regulations, but also, of course, the leadership agenda on sustainability. Before we start, we want to know from you, actually, how you relate to this agenda. So please go on Slido and help us with this question that then Mads and I will also pick up. What do you think is different about leadership for sustainability if you compare it to just leadership? Because when we compare or when we talk about leadership for sustainability, you know, we very often assume it is a different thing, right, compared to leadership. But what makes a difference, do you think? What makes leadership for sustainability different from just leadership? So please drop your thoughts online. We would be very keen to hear, and it will feed also into our discussion that I'm having with Mads in just a moment. And we believe it's always important, you know, to get and to gather your feedback on these things as well. So all right, the first results are coming in. Complexity and also another person decision making is more complex. Would you agree to that, Mads?
Yes and no, and we'll get into that, I think, when we get into the trade-off situation. And of course they are complex because many times you will not know all the shareholders, stakeholders. But if I may take a crack at it, I basically think that sustainability leadership, and now I'm talking about the role I had as a CEO, is no different from any other kind of leadership. It's part of building the culture of the company. Certainly all the operational things you have to do. You have to have sustainability assessments, you have to budget, you have to procedures. But you've got to build it into the culture of the company. It's not something we do because we're told to. This is how we do things. And I think that's one of the main roles of any CEO, that is building the special culture and will of the company.
So that's of course really important. So you emphasize it is a cultural exercise at the end of the day, and we will get to that in just a moment. I think yes.
No, but I also think that to me it was very much the moral and a personal choice
Yeah.
to lead the sustainability drive. I grew up with the attitude that you have to pay back.
Yes.
It's not written anywhere that you can use society's best resources just to your own benefit.
Yes.
But you need to also work in a way that creates value for society.
Yeah.
And you cannot always justify that business-wise. You'll try to do it with some business words, but basically, to me, it was a personal moral choice. That was the way we had to do business.
Okay, that's really, really interesting to hear, particularly this kind of personal component that you bring in. And what I see here, of course, is I think a lot of these things we will discuss, particularly I think the global character that is tied towards a lot of these sustainability challenges. This is quite reflected here in a lot of your comments. So yes. Let's look and let's keep that in mind. We have that here. What I will do now is I will basically focus on us and ask you also to drop questions. There is a Q&A function here, so if you want to ask us anything, please drop your question into the Q&A. Which allows us then to kind of also take your question into consideration. So Mes, let's start with the first question that we have here. What do you think really makes for leadership that drives companies' sustainability transition? What is the core of it from your experience? And you have so much experience.
Well, from my point of view, I just felt, and I know it sounds a little holy, that there was no other choice. Again, you're part of society. You cannot enrich yourself at the cost of society. If you want a business argument, I'm certain that sustainability will improve your business long term. It may get you better production processes. It may teach you new opportunities for business growth. In other words, it will help you create increased value, and value that is not something you share by taking somebody else's value, but creating new value if you need that business argument. But fundamentally, I think you need to start out with a conviction that this is just how business should be.
What do you do then internally in a company, right? I mean, if you want to build that culture that really convinces others that this is the way the business needs to be run, because there will always be people who kind of disagree with this, or at least maybe not right straightforwardly disagree, but at least kind of push back on some of this.
Well, I think I was very fortunate. We had in my time, which was a long time ago at Novo, a critical dialogue about how we did our business. For instance, we have a plant, or we had a plant just down the street here, fermentation plant. At a quarterly meeting, one of our operators says, "Hey, Mads, it's not okay that we mess up the atmosphere." And so our union members took up the issue with the municipality, and today we still could have a factory in Copenhagen. So there was in the company, perhaps from our founders, as they established a foundation, that their personal values became corporate governance also. And that was, for instance, an issue of paying back.
One of the questions that I also put down here for this webinar is how to deal with trade-offs. Because leaders, of course, sometimes will face trade-offs around sustainability, short-term, long-term. How do you deal with these trade-offs when you were in the driver's seat?
I think Andreas, that is a question that really ties into your previous question, because I think part of the leadership building also has to do with building credibility by the way you interact with NGOs, with businesses at large, and there will be trade-offs. Some of them are perhaps quite easy. People, when they talk about sustainability assessment, talk about some process things. Which activity do I locate money to first, but others are more substantial, the ones that will perhaps disrupt a long-term supplier relationship, and which may, bring some business risks that you do not want into your company. But if you don't make those choices, if you just, let's see if it works, then you lose that credibility. I think also sometimes you can dampen the effect of credibility by going to suppliers, because again, sustainability also deals with how you work with your supply chain. Go to your suppliers and teach them and work with them. It may take a little longer, but again, you're demonstrating that you want to get there. And I think, again, in sustainability, it's so important that you just get things done. Don't get down to theorizing everything. Don't think that it's a matter of, keeping regulations or anything like that. It's the way you drive the company.
Okay, that sounds very convincing to me, and I think this is the way also it's supposed to be. One other way to kind of show leadership for sustainability is usually through partnerships, and you've done that quite a bit actually with Novo Nordisk, coalitions, partnerships. You reach out to others. How do you do this, and how do you do it in a way that at the end of the day you really get something out of it?
Okay, let me tell you about one of the first instances. It was very important to us to live up to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, i.e. treat people with respect and dignity, sense of brotherhood, etc. And we had in our company a lawyer who had a special background in human rights, and we asked him, together with an outside help, to determine how well we were doing. Who helped us? We asked a professor in theology from the University of Aarhus to come and ask, the not so business oriented, but again, the human moral questions to work out that. We got a report, started working that. And it has been my experience that working with civil society is critically important to move your business in the direction of sustainability. But you've got to be very careful how you do it, because if there's one thing civil society, the NGOs, do not want, it is to be taken hostage by businesses. So you've got to be able to demonstrate to both of you, or all the three of you, what's in it for you, what's in it for me. And I think we have done it at Novo Nordisk in several areas. In environment, I think after my time, Novo Nordisk had a great example in their energy policy, in their switch away from fossil fuels. They decided to cut down on the use of electricity and work together with their energy supplier, and had an agreement that money savings would be split evenly between supplier and user. But to be an umpire or to implement and to control that, they worked together with World Wildlife Foundation, that had a group called Energy Savers, because the ambition of the company was to make certain that the result of this exercise was a new standard of CO2 emissions, etc. So we worked together in that way, and all the time had WWF, who of course had the interest in demonstrating that they could, working together with industry, also achieve some of their NGO goals. And it resulted in substantial money savings to our company and to the energy supplier, who used the funding they achieved from us to start their investment in a windmill park.
So that is I think it's a good example for a situation where the partnership really worked well. But have you come also across situations where it didn't work so well?
Yes, I think from time to time, we just didn't think enough about it. It's so easy to meet in Copenhagen with a representative from NGO head office in London, and then agree on something, and then ship it off to Bangalore and say, this is how you should do things. It doesn't work. You've got to make certain that when you ask your affiliates around the world to work with us, that it's something that fits into a local agenda, that it's not hand-me-downs. The guidance, the direction may hand-me-down, but the implementation and where we start has got to be local. Otherwise, you'll get nowhere. You'll create no ownership or anything like that. And I've made mistakes there. Come out to, for instance, to Bangalore, and they say, "Hey, Mads, you sent us this," and nothing had happened.
There's an interesting question here, and I want to bring this in by Fanny. The question is around, I work here in Europe, but our decision makers are based in the US. It's a very different environment when thinking about sustainability. So unless there is a clear business plan for it or a compliance matter, the driver is rather limited. How would you tackle that?
Well, I think I've limited experience of that, but I've had experience with dealing with suppliers in the US, where one of the things you need to do when you work with sustainability is, as I said, you need to involve society, you need to involve the NGOs. You cannot set your goals in a vacuum. You need to make certain that they reflect also society's desire. And the US business environment, in many instances, is very much formed by the litigiousness of the society. We found it very, very difficult to have our suppliers, and I know you asked about the principle, but have our suppliers let NGOs into their plants to see how they did things, because they were simply afraid of being sued. It was a long process. But what we did, I had an incredible colleague in Novo Nordisk, Lisa Kingo, who was responsible for this. She basically collected or had annual meetings with all our affiliates, where the leaders of the affiliates joined in on what were important in their countries. And we then shaped the messages according to that. And in the US, you're right, it had to be very, very business oriented, but underlying was still our conviction and the conviction of our US colleagues that this was the right way to business. Not again because of the bottom line, also because of the bottom line, but because this is how we want to behave. It's difficult, it's difficult.
And I think it's a really good point you're bringing in here. I mean, if you don't have a business case for something, and if it is not a compliance matter, you can at least try to pull the ethics case, right? The integrity case. Or Fanny, I mean, something that also should be considered is whether you have a business case for something also depends on the time horizon. Very often in the short run, you don't have a business case, but in the long run, you can. So it is also sometimes about reframing things, reframing things from the short towards the long run. And we have another question online here, which is a more generic question about balancing sustainability and profitability. How do we find a balance? And I think that probably relates also a bit to the ethics, right? To the integrity, because I mean, I think the question is a little bit along the lines: what do we do whenever we don't have a business case? And I know your response would be look into the ethics, look into the integrity.
Yeah, I'm afraid I may be carried off a little too much on the preacher role now, because I think if you have to feel that you must run your business all the time between a trade-off on profitability and on sustainability, I would question, excuse me, what kind of business I am in, because I think, again, that all businesses have an obligation to work towards, call it CSR, social responsibility, call it sustainability, to work towards a role where they are contributing to society and will make money there. Of course, you may also have to preserve that credibility, have to go out and say to the people who are the company and to stakeholders, look, we can't make it at this time, but these are our plans. And that's what we had to do very often. We had to say, look, this is going to be too much, be it investment in great environmental resources, but these are our plans. And we would then report to the NGOs, be it Friends of the Earth, be it Umweltschutz or whatever, on our progress. And they would guide us. They would tell us, look, danger signals here, are you aware of this? And we would, again, be able to develop in a business-like and through a manner the processes we wanted. And you could call that a balance. But again, it was making also society and civil society understand that you were moving and that there was a balance and that you were living up to the obligations you had undertaken.
Yeah. Okay, great. I think that's I think very reflective, also in the sense of where to go, and I'm fully with you here. I think we cannot just always play sustainability and profitability against each other. Of course, in practice it happens quite a bit, but then also kind of referring to Fanny's question earlier, it is also a matter of framing, right? How do you frame things within the company? After all, I mean, you have business cases for all sorts of things. You also have a business case for tax evasion. So it is a matter of cognitive framing. Maybe talk a little bit, or let's talk a little bit about boards and corporate governance, because that is a topic that is very relevant for this leadership agenda. At the end of the day, of course, a lot of decisions need to pass through the board, right? I mean, let's fool not ourselves. I mean, the sustainability agendas as they are, they need to be approved by board of directors. And often boards think in a rather compliance-oriented manner. And this is simply because the way they are trained, auditing, controlling, that is monitoring is high on their agenda. How do you talk to a board in a leadership style about these sustainability topics?
You're right, Andreas. It is not easy getting started, but it's my experience that if you supply the board with relevant tools, you get a very good dialogue. One of the problems is that many boards still love history because they get numbers that talk about what was, and then they get make-believe numbers about that. I felt that we as management team needed to have a mandate from the board. And again, it was inherent in the culture, but where was it setting? And, I tried to sneak it in every time we had personnel issues, we would get into, what are these things, etc. But then we found out that we basically would have, in the pharmaceutical company, we have a lot of quality checks, quality assurance, etc., that we would simply regard the drive in social responsibility and sustainability as part of our quality efforts. So we had our quality assurance people report on what we were doing in a way that our board understood. And then I think one of the most important recommendations we in old days made on board issues was risk management, to make boards understand what the risks are to the company. And when we would have our annual strategic meeting review with the board, we would ask the board members individually, say, what do you think are the biggest risks of the company? And there are many things that were not so business oriented. Image, can you hire enough people, would crop up. And we would then let our risk management people work at that, and at a 5-6 months later board meeting, bring those reports up. And thus it became part of our board agenda and became something that the board really contributed to. And they wanted to, and they did.
That's really interesting because, again, it's about framing, right? I mean, it's about almost looking for Trojan horses, frame things around quality, risk, and maybe avoid language that boards at least yet cannot easily connect to.
Right.
So that I'm very much with you. As you know, I'm studying it at the moment, and this is also what I hear quite a bit from other board members who kind of say, look, if you want this in leadership discussions, you don't always have to frame it as sustainability. Maybe frame it as quality assurance, risk management. Then a lot of doors open.
Yes, and it has, in my time, it at least led to the fact that the strategic review session over time changed format completely. Of course, there was still all the substantial financial, economic projections, etc. But there was equally much time spent on all the other soft, not so soft issues.
Let me pick up on one of the questions here, which is about expanding companies. I mean, whenever you expand as a company, of course, cultures change, right? I mean, this is natural. And many companies expand. Novo expands right now. Other companies expand as well. How do you deal with culture throughout such change processes? That is of course something I think that is not easy to do, not easy to handle with.
I think that in our case, the Novo Nordisk Foundation has played a major role in the way we act. First of all, the foundation has given us the opportunity to work long-term on many issues. In my first days when I worked with the foundation, one of the main issues were that we worked decently, and they were mainly fine scientists, and they were not so concerned about our business results as long as they felt that we were a decent company. And again, that was one of the things I inherited, you know, that again, decency was very important. And if you believe in that, if you believe in such values, then you've got to work as rigorously with them as you work with your budget. And so we had measurements and we had everything on living up to values. So that was one thing. But then I also think that there's one thing, and it may be a little bit too personal, but I think that with my successor, Lars Rebien and Øvlisen as part of the chairmanship of the foundation, and Mads Krogsgaard, Novo's research director, as CEO of the foundation, that they have continued building on the values and the way to do business that we shared when we were working together. And I'm very, I have no reason to be proud of it, but still I am. You should to see them invest in society's issue, be it nuclear energy, computer, incredible science, etc., or been better health and so forth. So I think that the fact that we have an owner, like a decisive owner, who has the ability and is willing to take some risks in long terms, trying to improve society, means a lot to us. So the ownership.
Ownership and also, I think I'm just referring to this question around expansion and corporate culture. Usually, the literature says a lot. The tone from the top matters. Yeah. In these kind of times of change, you know, where you either rapidly expand or you merge or something else happens, because then the tone from the top holds it together.
No, but I think it's very important. The one thing I really was concerned about was when I would meet other companies and I asked them, why do you act like this? And people say, but that's our policy. And you know, when people act and say, this is our policy, I get the sense of rituals and museums. And to me, it was very, and my colleagues, it was very important that our values were contemporary and real, also to people in other countries. Otherwise, we'd just be, you know, exporting Danish morals, and that was not the system. When we went through a process where I was going to ask all our affiliates to interpret our values, I visited our Japanese company. They made a small plastic stand that on one side had our values as they were dictated by the corporation in English. And then on the other side, they had it in Japanese writing. And most of them, all of them were, but one were in kanji, the traditional Japanese writing. And one was in katakana, this cartoon language. And I asked them, why this? And the English value they were referring to was honest and open. And I said, why a new word? And they said, we do not have that tradition or that terminology in Japanese business language. So this is what we call it. And I'm quite certain that their sense of honest and open was different from us, but at least they had worked with and were engaging in society. And I think that's so important, that you work with some basic values and you create an understanding that also makes a lot of sense locally.
How do you make people understand values? I mean, this is also what my students ask all the time in the classes, right? They kind of say, yes, values. If you have a big corporation, right? How do I make sure that the scientist, the quality assurance worker, the finance professional in the finance department, that they really get it at the end of the day, that they really connect to these things?
I think I sometimes say that being the CEO is more boring than anything, because you've got to be as chaste as Caesar's wife. When your old friend who became head of a pharmaceutical company in the US invited you to tennis in Wimbledon, you better pay the tickets yourself. So be certain, that you, and it's not all that boring, but just be certain that you live the way you talk. Little things, be to work on time, being at work time, but just making certain that you try to, little boys cry like live the values all the time. And because that's what people see. That's what.
And this is also the kind of the stories that spread in the organization. I remember many years ago, I studied Lufthansa, the German aviation company. And they went through a significant cost reduction program, and I asked them, so what are the consequences of that? And they said, look, one consequence is senior management flies economy. And they said, and we did this deliberately, not only because of the cost, but they said it sends a signal. This is what people see. These are the stories that are shared in the organization. And this rather simple move of having senior executives, the CEO, fly economy, made a huge impact on the entire organization.
But I couldn't imagine flying business class and having colleagues sitting down there. But it's all about creating a corporate conscience. I once came to one of our experimental plants, which had a very fine electricity saving system. And I asked them, why this, how do you find it? And they said, it's because you told us to. I never had heard about it. And again, if you can create that conscience, could we do it better? Could we do it not? I don't want to sound too holy, but it's again, I think it's much easier also if it's something that means something to you personally, not something you do because a lawmaker has told you to, or something like that.
So this kind of personal connection. There is one more question here by Joe. Yes, I mean it's a long question. I will try to briefly summarize it for the rest of you. Basically asking, how can we approach sustainable transitions or sustainability transitions in the current context, where you have basically science tells us, that growth is difficult, that we overshoot. So what do we do? How do we position a sustainability transition in such a context? And just to give you also a bit of context here, I mean, there's quite a bit of discussion on degrowth also right now. Not to say, that this is exactly what Joe is referring to here, but of course, we find ourselves in a context right now where a lot of people say, hey, maybe we need to reflect on the very basis of the business models that we are having.
This is a question that makes a lot of sense. And I may, be a little over the hill, but in my time, one of the great ways of approaching this was actually using the Global Compact as a model, because it does not go in and tell you exactly what you should do. It does not set standards for what you should do, but it gives you a teaching, a way of approaching, and then the basic obligation you have is to report on progress. And I think again that getting that process started, where you choose among the several strategic development goals, which one suits you the better. It may be doing something in cities, it may be doing something to the ocean. Just getting started will build that into your business. Of course, I realize that there are some businesses that will die out one day, and I wish I had the soothing answer or the way to get out of that. But I think, again, taking that internal discussions, how can we, with some external guidance, now people coming and telling you do this, you do that, but people who can give you ideas of in which direction to steer, for instance, the Global Compact, and then follow those and quietly transform your business, hopefully having the time to see a new direction. Tough question.
Yeah. And then I think it's nice that you refer to the Global Compact, because the spirit of the compact, often misunderstood. We must say the spirit of the context of the compact was always let firms really reflect on the bottom of their business, right? It was never thought to be some sort of compliance catalog.
Right.
And of course, once you go there, once you really reflect on your business, and John, if I may add, I mean, one thing I think that needs reflection is, how do we approach sustainability? Is it reducing harm, or kind of being more sustainable, right? And both are not always the same thing. And I think if you have discussions about this in companies, about this agenda, what is sustainability for you? Is it reducing harm, and of course acting sustainably, and how do both relate to each other in the business? Then I think you win quite a bit. There is another interesting question here by Fanny on the recent political shift we are seeing in Europe, and how will this affect the sustainability agenda? And I think that's an excellent question, because I mean, there is so much happening politically speaking. We just had European elections, and of course, I mean, the EU Green Deal has pushed a lot, right, over the last couple of months, years. Also, we have seen new legislation. Personally, I think, Fanny, before I hand it over to Mess, I think we will probably see a slowing of the green agenda in Europe. And this is mostly also because we see a reframing of political priorities right now in Europe. This is a bitter pill to swallow, but let's not kind of try to frame things in a different way. At the moment, the political agenda looks a lot like security concerns, competitiveness concerns are very high on the agenda. The Green Deal is still alive, and it will also be alive after the election. The question is just how exactly we will act upon. And a lot here will depend on where Mrs. von der Leyen will get her votes from in order to be elected into a second term. But more broadly, Mess, what do you think? Where are we heading?
Well, I'm concerned, and just to tell you where I come from, I used to work a bit at the Global Compact, and I was very proud when we got our little badge with all the different colors. But I must admit that after a while, I stopped wearing it, because I found so many politicians just put it on, as you know, as an emblem of saying, I'm one of the believers. And when you asked for a substantial discussion of sustainability, you know, it was very superficial, very headlines oriented. And of course, there are political groups, there are politicians that take this very seriously. And there are NGOs, fortunately, also who work very diligently with this. But I think that we need to get away from this current situation, where there's a barrage of initiatives coming in, and where you would really like, for instance, the EU to set some long-term priorities and give member states the possibility, which I'm sure is the aim, to accommodate and then get your work clothes on instead of being on the rostrum all the time. Because I think green is good, but so what?
So in a sense, of course, we cannot just leave it to politicians, right? And that's exactly why we need this agenda that we discussed here today. We need strong leadership that really acts on the promises.
Also need the civil society, because in my experience, the people who sit in Friends of the Earth, NOAA, etc., are often very highly motivated people who know the science, who know the business as much as you do, and you will learn from them. You will be forewarned, as I said before, of what changes might be coming. You can discuss how you will change your business with them and get an alliance where they are not taken hostage, but where they know what they want to get out of this. They may be just getting that you teach them how to run an office, but that you, again, make certain that civil society plays a major role.
Thank you so much for your perspectives, Mess. It's always a pleasure. Mess and I, we've known each other for a long time, and you're also very very forthcoming and coming to my lectures always and being here this morning. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, your thoughts about leadership, which resonate, of course, extremely well with what we are trying to achieve here. And for all you good people out there, let me just mention one more thing, that right now, of course, we are having lots of initiatives here at CBS and CBS Executive in particular with regard to sustainability. One thing that we are doing is we're trying to push exactly with what Mess and I were just talking about. Let's push sustainability into the top leadership debate. So we set up actually a new program on sustainable leadership and transformation, which is aimed at senior leaders in an organization. So please forgive me for this little bit of self-advertising here, but we think it is important that we really have this agenda as part of the leadership discussion, and that we don't, what happens actually quite often is that you have the leadership discussion here and the sustainability discussion here. What we are trying to do here in this webinar, but also in programs like this, is to really integrate it, to have also the uncomfortable discussions, and I think this is what drives the agenda after all. Thank you so much for being with us this morning for this executive morning brief. Thanks to you, Mess. It's been great to have you here. And for all good people out there, please stay tuned for further webinars, which we will announce, of course, on social media. Thank you very much and have a good day. Bye-bye.